My friend, when you look at the battles of life, they can seem overwhelming. Fear rises, doubts whisper, and your strength feels too small for the weight you carry. But here is the hope you must never forget. The Spirit of God is with you. He is not distant, He is not silent, and He is not weak. He steps into your struggle with the very power of heaven. It is the Spirit who lifts you when your strength runs out. It is the Spirit who guides you when confusion blinds your way. It is the Spirit who prays for you when words fail. It is the Spirit who breaks the grip of fear, who takes your weakness and makes it a testimony, who gives you victory through surrender, and who secures the triumph Christ has already won. You were never called to fight these battles alone. That is why the Spirit lives within you, to fight for you, to stand beside you, and to lead you into victory. So lift your head, take courage, and place your trust not in yourself, but in the one who cannot be defeated. The enemy may roar, the storm may rage, but the victory is certain. The cross has settled it, the resurrection has sealed it, and the Spirit ensures you walk in it. Go forward in faith, let Him fight for you, and you will see that every battle becomes a testimony of God's power and glory. Have you ever come to a place where you were simply too tired to fight anymore? The battle raged on, whether in your family, your health, your finances, or within your own mind, and you felt like you had no strength left. You tried everything you knew, strategy, wisdom, hard work, and even sheer willpower, but the battle only seemed bigger than you. My friend, hear this truth today. God never intended for you to fight your battles alone. He has given you His Spirit not only to comfort you, but to fight for you. When your strength runs out, His strength begins. When your hands grow weak, His power rises up. Victory is not found in your ability, but in His Spirit living within you. There comes a point in life when our human strength reaches its limit. You may be fighting a battle in your home, in your relationships, in your health, or in your own mind, and you feel drained, worn out, and empty. You have tried your best to hold everything together, but the weight has become heavier than what you can carry. This is where the Spirit of God steps in. He was not given to you as an accessory or a distant idea. He was given to empower you with strength that goes beyond your natural ability. What you cannot do in your flesh, the Spirit accomplishes through His power. When your hands are weak and your heart feels faint, the Spirit supplies fresh strength to endure, to stand, and to keep moving forward. This is not ordinary strength. Human strength runs out, but the strength of the Spirit is unlimited because it flows from God Himself. The Spirit takes your weakness and becomes the fuel that keeps you standing when everything else says you should fall. Think of the early believers who faced persecution, rejection, and trials that would have crushed them if they had relied on their own energy. Yet they remained faithful, not because of their own might, but because the Spirit of God gave them courage and power. The same Spirit that strengthened them is the same Spirit who strengthens you today. Often we look at ourselves and say, I don't have what it takes. And in one sense, that is true. We do not have what it takes in ourselves. But the Spirit within us makes all the difference. He equips us with boldness when we feel afraid, endurance when we feel exhausted, and peace when our minds are overwhelmed. What we lack, He supplies. What we cannot reach, He bridges. Our part is not to try harder in our own strength, but to surrender and allow Him to work through us. This strength is not only for extraordinary situations, it is for daily living. Every time you wake up weary, every time you face a challenge you cannot control, every time you feel tempted to give in, the Spirit is present to lift you up. He does not promise to remove every burden, but He does promise to give you the strength to carry what once seemed unbearable. You may still walk through valleys, but you will walk through them empowered, not defeated. This strength also changes how you see your battles. Instead of being overwhelmed by the size of the mountain before you, you begin to see the greatness of the God who lives within you. The Spirit shifts your focus from what you lack to the one who has all power. With that perspective, your spirit rises above discouragement and your faith begins to grow. So if today you feel like you are at the end of yourself, remember this, that is not the end of the story. The Spirit of God is your strength beyond human effort. Lean on Him, call on Him, trust Him. What you cannot do on your own, He will do through you. And when the victory comes, you will know it was not by your might, not by your power, but by His Spirit working in you. Life has a way of leading us into moments of confusion. There are seasons when the path ahead seems unclear, when decisions feel overwhelming, and when the noise of competing voices makes it hard to discern what is true. In those moments, doubt creeps in, and the mind becomes restless. Confusion is one of the enemy's favorite weapons because it leaves you paralyzed, uncertain, and afraid of making the wrong move. Yet God has not left His children to stumble in the dark. He has given His Spirit to guide us in the midst of confusion, to shine light on the path, and to lead us into truth. The Spirit's guidance is not like human wisdom that changes with opinions or trends. His guidance is steady, unshakable, and always aligned with the will of God. When your own reasoning fails, the Spirit brings clarity. He does not shout with chaos. He whispers with peace. He reminds you of what God has already spoken in His Word and applies it directly to your situation. That is why Jesus called Him the Counselor, the Helper, the Spirit of Truth. In a world filled with lies and uncertainty, the Spirit is your compass pointing you back to God's direction. Think about how many times confusion has clouded your decisions. Perhaps you wondered whether to move forward in faith or to wait, whether to speak or to remain silent, whether to pursue an opportunity or to walk away. Human wisdom may weigh the pros and cons, but the Spirit sees what you cannot see. He knows the beginning from the end, and He guides you according to God's perfect plan. Sometimes His guidance comes as a deep conviction, a quiet assurance in your heart. Other times, He redirects you by closing doors you thought were meant for you, only to lead you towards something better. His ways may not always make sense in the moment, but they are always right. Confusion often leads to fear, but the Spirit replaces fear with peace. And even when the outcome is uncertain, He assures you that God is in control. That peace itself becomes the sign of His guidance. When your heart is restless and unsettled, the Spirit is warning you to pause. When your heart is steady and confident in God's will, He is confirming your steps. Learning to recognize His peace is one of the greatest ways to navigate life's confusion. But the Spirit does not only guide individuals, He guides communities. When believers gather in prayer, seeking God's direction together, the Spirit brings unity. What once seemed confusing becomes clear as hearts align under His leading. He removes pride, silences doubt, and confirms God's will through harmony among His people. So when you find yourself standing at a crossroads, unsure of what to do, remember that you are not left to wander. The Spirit of God is your guide in the midst of confusion. Trust His voice, lean into His word, and allow His peace to direct your steps. The world may be filled with uncertainty, but the Spirit always knows the way. And when you follow His leading, you will discover that confusion does not have the final word. Clarity and truth do, because the Spirit Himself walks beside you. There are times in life when the weight of circumstances presses so heavily that words seem to fail. You kneel to pray, but nothing comes out. Your heart aches, your mind spins, and your spirit feels empty. In those moments, you may think your prayers are weak or meaningless, but that is where the Spirit of God steps in. He intercedes on your behalf, carrying your cries before the throne of God in ways that go beyond human language. What you cannot articulate with your lips, the Spirit communicates with groanings too deep for words. He becomes your advocate, ensuring that your prayers align with the will of God, even when you do not know how to pray. The Spirit's intercession is not limited to desperate moments alone. It is a constant ministry in the life of the believer. Every day the Spirit is at work within you, praying through you, guiding your words, and shaping your heart to desire the things of God. When you ask for something outside His will, He redirects your heart. When you cannot see the bigger picture, He prays according to God's eternal plan. In this way, your prayers are not left to human weakness, but are carried by divine power. That is why the prayers of the righteous are effective, not because of human effort, but because of the Spirit's involvement. This truth gives great comfort. Many people struggle with prayer because they fear they do not say the right words or follow the right structure. But prayer is not about eloquence, it is about surrender. When you bring your weakness before God, the Spirit fills the gaps. He strengthens your faith when doubt tries to silence your prayers. He reminds you of God's promises when fear clouds your vision. He nudges your spirit when it's time to persevere in prayer and not give up. The Spirit intercedes not only for your needs, but also for your transformation, molding you into someone who prays with confidence, persistence, and hope. There is also a spiritual battle tied to prayer. The enemy knows that prayer is powerful, and he will try to discourage you with distractions, confusion, and weariness. Yet the Spirit stands as your defender. He equips you to press through when you feel like quitting. He covers you in the armor of God and strengthens your resolve to stand firm. What feels like weakness on your part becomes strength when the Spirit takes over. When you realize that the Spirit Himself is praying for you, it changes how you approach the throne of God. You no longer come timidly, unsure of whether you are being heard. You come with assurance, knowing that the Spirit's intercession ensures that your prayers rise before the Father, pure, powerful, and aligned with His will. Even when you feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, the Spirit is at work behind the scenes, moving in ways you cannot see. So do not give up on prayer. Do not allow silence or confusion to make you think God has turned away. The Spirit is interceding for you, speaking on your behalf, and aligning your life with heaven's purposes. Prayer is not just you reaching toward God. It is God through His Spirit reaching back into your life. And in that divine partnership, your battles are fought, your burdens are lifted, and your faith is made strong. Fear is one of the most crippling forces a person can experience. It creeps into the heart like a shadow and grows until it controls thoughts, emotions, and even decisions. Fear whispers lies that you are not enough, that your future is uncertain, that danger is waiting around every corner. It robs you of peace and drains you of courage. Left unchecked, fear can become a prison that keeps you from walking in the fullness of God's plan. But here is the good news. The Spirit of God breaks the power of fear. He does not come to enslave you, but to set you free, to give you a sound mind, and to anchor your heart in the unshakable love of God. When fear grips your life, it often feels overwhelming and impossible to resist. Yet the Spirit reminds you of who God is and who you are in Him. Fear thrives on lies and uncertainty, but the Spirit brings truth and assurance. He whispers to your spirit that you are not alone, that God has gone before you, and that His perfect love drives out fear. This is not simply a positive thought or a temporary comfort. It is the supernatural presence of God's Spirit replacing anxiety with peace. Where fear tries to paralyze you, the Spirit empowers you to stand with courage. Think about how many times fear has caused people to hold back from stepping into their calling, from sharing their faith, or from making decisions that honor God. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. These are chains the enemy uses to keep believers bound. But when the Spirit fills your heart, He breaks those chains. He gives you boldness to speak when you would rather stay silent, confidence to act when you would rather shrink back, and faith to move forward when circumstances look uncertain. His presence is stronger than the grip of fear, and His power lifts you above it. The Spirit also teaches you to shift your focus. Fear grows when you magnify our problems and minimize God's promises. The Spirit redirects your eyes from the storm to the Savior, from the what if to the what is, the reality that God is with you. He reminds you of the victories God has already brought into your life, and He assures you that the same God who was faithful yesterday will be faithful today and tomorrow. This change in perspective shrinks fear down to size and builds unshakable confidence in God's power. Even in moments when fear tries to return, the Spirit provides a lasting defense. He brings scripture to your mind, He stirs worship in your heart, and He gives you words of prayer that strengthen your soul. Fear may knock on the door, but when the Spirit is dwelling within you, courage answers instead. So if fear has been holding you captive, know this: the Spirit of God is stronger than fear's grip. He is not a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Trust Him, lean on Him, and allow His presence to replace your trembling with bold faith. The Spirit breaks the power of fear, and when He does, you are free to live with confidence, courage, and peace in the One who holds your life securely in His hands. Every one of us knows what it feels like to be weak. Weakness shows up in different forms. It may be physical exhaustion, emotional weariness, spiritual struggles, or moments of failure when we fall short of what we know is right. The world often teaches us to hide weakness, to cover it up, or to pretend we are stronger than we are. But the Spirit of God does the opposite. He takes what looks like weakness and turns it into a testimony of God's strength. What once brought you shame becomes a platform for God's glory. What once broke you becomes a story of restoration that inspires others. The beauty of the Spirit's work is that He never wastes your struggles. The very places where you feel inadequate are the places where His power shines the brightest. Weakness on its own seems like defeat, but when surrendered to God, weakness becomes the doorway to dependence, and dependence on God is where miracles happen. The Spirit takes your insufficiency and makes it clear that the victory was never about your strength, but about God's. When others see what you have overcome, not by your own ability, but by His, they cannot deny the reality of His presence in your life. Think about the countless people who have walked through battles and emerged stronger, not because of themselves, but because of the Spirit within them. A broken marriage restored, an addiction overcome, a heart once filled with fear, now filled with peace. Each of these is a testimony that points to the transforming power of the Spirit. Your weakness, when touched by God, is not the end of the story. It becomes the very evidence of His grace at work. The Spirit also uses weakness to teach humility. If you had the strength to conquer every battle on your own, you would never learn to rely on God. But in weakness, you are reminded of your need for Him. And as you lean on Him, He not only lifts you, but also uses your journey to lift others. People who are hurting do not need to see perfect lives. They need to see real lives that God has redeemed. Your testimony of how the Spirit brought you through weakness can become the encouragement that someone else desperately needs. This transformation also silences the enemy's accusations. The devil thrives on pointing out your failures and weaknesses, trying to convince you that you are unworthy or incapable. But the Spirit turns those very weaknesses into weapons of victory. The story the enemy meant for shame becomes the story God uses for His glory. Instead of hiding your scars, you begin to see them as reminders of God's healing. Instead of being defined by failure, you are defined by redemption. So if you are walking in weakness today, do not despair. Do not believe the lie that your weakness disqualifies you. In the hands of the Spirit, your weakness is the soil where testimony grows. Surrender it to Him and watch as He takes what once felt like defeat and turns it into a declaration of His power. Your weakness is not the end. It is the beginning of a testimony that will declare to the world, God is faithful, His Spirit is strong, and His grace is more than enough. Victory is a word that stirs hope in the human heart. Everyone longs for it. Victory over fear, over sin, over circumstances that feel impossible. Yet so often we live as if victory is uncertain, as though we must strive harder, fight longer, or prove ourselves stronger to finally see it. But the truth is this: the Spirit of God secures the victory that is already won. The battle has been settled through the cross and the resurrection. What Christ accomplished is final, complete, and unshakable. The Spirit's role is to make that victory a living reality in the life of every believer. Too often we forget this and live as though we are still defeated. We let guilt from the past weigh us down. We let fear of tomorrow consume our thoughts. We let the voices of the enemy convince us that we are powerless. But the Spirit whispers a greater truth. The war is already decided. You are not fighting for victory, you are fighting from victory. That means your circumstances, no matter how difficult, cannot erase the triumph of Christ. The Spirit reminds you that the grave is empty, the chains are broken, and the enemy is already conquered. The Spirit secures this truth deep in your soul, so that even in the heat of battle, you can stand firm. He strengthens your faith when doubts try to creep in. He reminds you of God's promises when lies press against your heart. He anchors you in the assurance that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The Spirit does not remove the battles of life, but He gives you the confidence to walk through them, knowing the outcome has already been written, and that outcome is victory. Think of how a soldier fights when he knows the war is already won. His courage is greater, his endurance is stronger, his perspective is different. That is what the Spirit gives you. He empowers you to face trials with hope rather than despair, to meet opposition with peace rather than panic, and to endure suffering with faith rather than fear. Because of Him, you do not fight as a victim, you fight as a victor. This assurance also changes how you see setbacks. What looks like defeat in the moment is often just part of the process God is using to reveal His glory. The Spirit shows you that even when the enemy tries to strike, God is turning it for good. Even when you feel weak, His power is being made perfect. Even when you cannot see the end, the Spirit points you back to the cross where the end was already decided. So lift your head high in the middle of your battle. Do not let despair convince you that you are losing. The Spirit of God secures the victory that Christ has already won. You are more than a conqueror, not because of your own strength, but because of His. The war is finished, the enemy is defeated, and the Spirit ensures that you walk in that reality every single day. Your victory is not a hope, it is a certainty, sealed by the Spirit who lives in you